Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 5th and final part of What If Naruto Lost His Memories. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Before beginning, Haruno Sakura took a deep breath. Kakashi, her first sensei, was now Hokage, and Tsunade, her previous sensei, was retired but still active. They were closest to her right now as she organized her thoughts for the upcoming debriefing. Lee sat by her side, firmly holding her hand. Her remaining friends were in the room, but they were spread out. She didn't want to go through this again, so she asked if they could be there. Her skin was still deathly thin, but there was some flesh beneath it. She doubted she'd be able to return to duty as Konoha's second-best medical ninja, but she hoped that within a year she'd be healthy enough to be a ninja if she so desired. The first day of the war. I'm not sure about all of the specifics, but this is what I recall, she began by saying. We're having an incident at the Eastern Gate, Tsunade-sama. Uchiha Sasuke is standing there looking for you. As he rushed into the office, a Chunin called out. Shizune and Sakura had both been assisting Tsunade with her paperwork today when they heard the announcement. Tsunade glared drunken daggers at the Chunin, and Taunton let out a small remorseful sound. Oh, he isn't he? Instead of treating him like a victim, I should have had that traitorous Uchiha declared a missing nin the day he left, the Hokage snarled. Tsunade stood, barely keeping her balance, as the effects of too much sake and not enough food had taken their toll on the elderly woman. Piles of unopened paperwork were piled up around the office. Shizune approached Tsunade and said, Tsunade-sama, perhaps you should delegate this task to someone else. You've already consumed a substantial amount of sake today. Tsunade chuckled as she looked at her senior apprentice. Shizune, I am a Sanin. I can handle one pipsqueak like Uchiha. Move out of my way. Shizune said meekly, yes, Tsunade-sama. She'd felt Tsunade's backhand too many times in the previous year to go up against her master this time. With a bow, the dark-haired woman moved out of Tsunade's way. Shizune bowed her head after Tsunade left the office. Sakura bit her lower lip. Tsunade's situation had deteriorated steadily since Naruto's disappearance. Tsunade seemed to be the only person who wasn't drunk after spending time with Hinata and the twins. Tsunade bowed her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had no idea she had been so cruel to Shizune over the last few months. Naruto approached her and squeezed her shoulder. Shizune immediately began cleaning up the empty bottles and placing a small tray of food on the desk for when her master returned. Tsunade would only eat if she found the plate and assumed she had gotten it herself and had forgotten about it. Shizune was too attached to Tsunade to abandon her. Sakura got to work separating unsigned papers and stamping low-ranked mission reports with the Hokage's stamp. The important items would be placed in places where Tsunade would notice them and hopefully act on them. She hoped Lee would return soon from his mission. After a day of assisting Shizune in the Hokage's office, she needed some cuddle time. It was nearly a half hour before a single Anbu ran into the office. An incident occurred at the gate. Tsunade-sama has been admitted to the hospital, the Anbu stated urgently. When a gurgle could be heard behind Sakura, she turned to go to the hospital. A needle pierced the back of her neck before she could turn. She passed out almost immediately. Poison, she reasoned. Taunton let out a cut-off squeal as her body crumpled. Shizune's head lay apart from her body as the last thing her eyes saw before going dark. Sakura struggled to focus her chakra as consciousness returned, but she couldn't. A bright light shone down on the hard surface she was lying on. She gradually opened her eyes until she could see the bars of the cage. Her body ached in places she didn't expect it to, but she knew she was in jail. Her usual attire had been replaced by a simple shirt and gym shorts. "They even stole my underwear," she complained. Other things began to impact her consciousness once her clothing situation was noticed. Her stomach began to growl. She, too, became extremely thirsty. "I must have been on drugs for days to be this bad. So, where am I?" she wondered. She looked around but couldn't find a sink or a toilet. So much for looking for a drink. This has to be a holding cell. She stood up on shaky legs and walked up to the cell's bars. The blank wall opposite the room gave no indication of her location. All she could tell was that the masonry was new and hadn't been heavily painted yet. Sakura tested the bars with her pinky to see if they were charged, but they were not. She attempted to call forth her chakra-enhanced strength, but nothing happened. She gently shook the bars, but they remained firmly in place. She returned to her bed and sat to wait. It had been more than an hour before she heard a door nearby open. When she looked up, she noticed footsteps approaching. A pair of white-masked ninja appeared at her cage's bars. One person spoke up. "Haruno Sakura, you'll accompany us. It is not advisable to resist." The other touched something to a seal she couldn't see on the cage's side, and the bars slid to one side. Sakura chose the masked ninja. The passages reminded Sakura of Orochimaru's base from years ago. That sent shivers up her spine. She was dissatisfied with the possibilities here. The men led her into a room with a simple table in the center and chairs on either side. "Sit," said one of the ninja. Sakura had no choice but to comply. Uchiha Sasuke, the last person she expected to see, walked through the door minutes later. She was about to take a step forward when she felt a hand on her shoulder. The pressure was sufficient to keep her seated. "What am I doing here, Sasuke?" she demanded. "Ah, such bad manners for a long-lost friend," Sasuke said, a strange smile on his face. Sakura couldn't place it, but she remembered seeing one like it before. "It doesn't matter. You've arrived in my village. I'm going to make you an impossible offer. Reject the Leaf Village and join my sound." "As if," sneered Sakura. "Sakura, you don't seem to understand your situation. You are currently listed as an A-class missing nin of Konoha, a traitor accused of the deaths of your former big sister, Shizune, and Tsunade's pet pig. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't go back there." Sasuke chuckled lightly, his voice eerie. Coo, they say." Sakura averted her gaze from Sasuke. "I did not murder anyone. Someone wearing an Anbu mask committed these crimes and kidnapped me." "Are you sure?" With a smile, Sasuke said. "What about the dozen people who saw Haruno Sakura leave the office covered in blood after doing the deed? That much evidence would be difficult to overcome." Sakura attempted to stand, but the ninja behind her held her down. She tried again, but it was like attempting to move a mountain. "Come with me, Sakura." Sasuke began to sing. "You can broaden your research beyond wound healing. Everything Orochimaru and Kabuto discovered about the body is available to you. You could discover cures for diseases and conditions that no one else has attempted to discover. Nobody could ever stop you. As a healer, you could be better than Tsunade. If you say yes, all of that could be yours." Sakura is lying if she says she isn't tempted. The image of Shizune's head on the floor of Tsunade's office, on the other hand, reminded her exactly who she would be making a deal with. Sakura shut her eyes. "Haruno Sakura, rank Jonin ninja of Konohakagure no Sato," she replied. "So that's how you'd like it to be?" "Sakura, I can be patient. After all, I've already won this game, Sasuke spoke in hushed tones. He flung a ninja headband on the table. The black cloth was stiff from dried blood, but the Konoha leaf was visible. There will be no blonde hero coming to Konoha's aid this time. Naruto, Sakura said quietly. Put her in jail. Make sure her physical needs are met, but otherwise, no visitors, Sasuke gave the order. Sasuke took the headband and exited the room. The guards waited more than a minute before escorting Sakura to a new cell. This one was a 10 by 6 foot room with a folding cot from the wall, a sink, and a toilet. Sakura sat and considered her options after the guards had left. Weeks went by. Every week, she was brought to the room and the offer was repeated. Haruno Sakura, ninja of Konohakagure no Sado, rank Jonin, was all she ever said to Sasuke. She didn't say anything else to Sasuke. Sasuke eventually stopped coming. She'd lost track of how long she'd been in this cell. The lights were never turned off, and the food arrived at random times. Her only way of knowing how long she had been there came after 6 months. Her birth control implant had expired, and her cycles had resumed. Her guards, following their leader's orders, allowed her to take care of all of her physical needs except exercise. Her cell's small floor space was all she had. Her chakra had returned slightly, but not sufficiently to use. Something in the building's construction was suppressing anything extraneous to what was required to live. Sakura was held in a different location after about a year in captivity. The new cell was still in the same labyrinth, but she could tell it was in a different place. She could hear other people but never see them. Sakura started having blackouts and strange nightmares. In her dreams at night, she saw images of intimate torture. Her pelvis hurt after several blackouts, she realized. She discovered no evidence of rape or sexual activity on herself, but the pains persisted. Her cycle was late, which was her first indication that something had gone wrong. She counted and recounted, but she was still late. She hoped it was a one-time blunder. It had happened previously. After some time had passed, she began to experience morning sickness. She couldn't deny it any longer. She was expecting a child. Sasuke was using her as a breeder, inseminating her like cattle. She requested that the guard deliver a message to Sasuke. She was in the same room where she had always seen Sasuke, but this time was different. She was tense and not at all defiant. Sasuke walked in as if he owned the place, which he did. He smirked at Sakura and waited for her to say something. "What did you do to me, Sasuke?" she inquired quietly. Sasuke simply smirked and chuckled like Orochimaru. "Sakura, I've just given you what you wanted since you were 10 years old. You were one of those little fangirls who wanted to help me, so I am now fulfilling your heartfelt wish. You get to help bring the Uchiha clan back to life," Sasuke said with a smile. "Why?" Sakura inquired, her voice low. "Because I can," Sasuke said as he turned to leave. Sakura said quietly, "Monster." That silenced Sasuke. "Oh, am I a monster? Consider this, since I'm going to be a monster in your mind. Your beloved village is dying. Many of your friends have died or been paralyzed, according to my men. Ino and Choji are no longer alive. Ten was paralyzed, and Neji was blinded. The 2 idiots you flirted with and who carried papers for you and Shizune are no longer alive. However, there is one positive aspect to all of this. Lee finally gave up on his spandex outfit and stopped yelling about youth. I'm not having this baby, Sasuke, Sakura declared. Sakura, if the baby dies, so will your mother and younger sister in Konoha. That is something my agents can easily handle. If you have any doubts, I can have a current photo of them for you in 2 days. Sasuke's threat made Sakura pale. Leave them alone, she yelled. These people aren't even ninja. Sakura, you'd better take good care of my child. They are counting on you. Sasuke said nothing more as he walked away. That day, something in Sakura broke. She would just sit in her cell and cry. She would do what was asked of her but nothing more. She was taken to the doctor, and the baby's health was ensured. But no one could lift her spirits. Neither the guards nor the doctors were kind or cruel. She was nothing more than their leader's child. Sakura examined her bloated stomach. Her anxiety grew with each passing second. She had a feeling she was going to have a daughter. That had made Sasuke angry. He desired strong Uchiha sons. She was due at any time, according to the doctors. They were watching for the first signs of labor. Small aches had forewarned them of the impending birth. Sakura was taken to the operating room, where doctors prepared to perform a caesarean birth. There would be no taking chances with a potential Uchiha scion. When the baby was born, Sakura was barely awake. She could only see the sheet covering her midsection, and the local anesthetic kept her from feeling anything. The baby girl's cries echoed throughout the room. The cries were abruptly cut off. Sakura attempted but failed to raise herself to see. The attending nurse looked down, then sadly at Sakura. What? What's the matter with her? Sakura screamed. Then she noticed Sasuke approaching her with an angry expression on his face. What occurred? Sakura screamed once more. Her hair was pink, Sasuke said as he walked away. There will be no pink-haired Uchiha. Sakura realized this was not the Sasuke she remembered from her youth. He, too, was incapable of such cruelty. The mind and soul may have existed once, but they were both corrupted beyond recognition by Orochimaru's influence. Some of the monster's essence remained within him and consumed Uchiha Sasuke. The room was filled with murderous intent. Almost every ninja exuded it. Lee tightened his grip on Sakura's hand. They could all see why Sakura only wanted to do this once. The frail woman continued, her voice hoarse. Sakura physically recovered, but she had no desire to live after that. The doctors returned her to her original cell. Food was placed in front of her by guards. It sat there untouched. She didn't drink anything. She didn't do anything. She was sitting in her cell after a few days when she heard a voice. How mighty Tsunade's apprentice has fallen, said Sasuke. Are you going to curl up and die? Sakura sensed something else within her snap. She lunged at the voice, but the bars stopped her. Her fingers stretched through the metal, but she was still inches short of her goal. You're a jerk, Orochimaru, she yelled. He could only laugh at her. Sakura's only response was to spit in the face of Uchiha. Uchiha's eyes changed as he became enraged by the act. The dark black iris turned red with 3 black tome marks before shifting back into the 6-pointed star of his Mangekyo Sharingan. Sakura drew back as his genjutsu engulfed her. Sakura screamed and jumped out of bed. She took a look around the well-lit room. As she crawled out of bed, she pushed the bed sheets aside. She yanked on her nightgown until she realized there was something wrong. She wasn't the only one in the room. The person sitting up in bed was concernedly looking at her. Sakura-chan, what's the matter with my wife? Lee stated. Lee? But wasn't I just in Sasuke's cell? He was. This has to be genjutsu, right? She muttered something. We rescued Sakura-chan from that place years ago. Have you forgotten something else? Lee inquired. Rescued? What exactly do you mean, rescued? Sakura expressed her skepticism. Sakura-chan, look in the mirror, Lee said quietly. Sakura turned to face the mirror Lee had indicated. Her mirror image was of a woman in her late 30s. Minor wrinkles and the first signs of gray hair were visible through the glass. But I was only in a sound prison, she said, touching her face. Lee approached her from behind and hugged her. My love, the time spent there did some harm. You may experience temporary memory loss at times. Tsunade-sama did everything she could for you before she died, but it keeps coming back. The memories will return sooner or later. Even the bad ones, sadly. Her attention was drawn to the sound of crying. A child? She inquired. The door to the bedroom flew open, and a 5-year-old girl ran in, pursued by a 10-year-old boy. Mama, help! Yelled the girl who dashed over and grabbed her leg. Lee laughed until he noticed Sakura's confusion. Enough, Brandon and Peach. Mama is currently having one of her episodes and needs to rest. When this happens, remember what we discussed. I'm sorry, Mom, the boy apologized. Brandon, Sakura thought. I'm sorry, Mama, Peach said. The girl hugged her leg, then released it, looking contrite. Lee escorted the kids out of the room and returned Sakura's smile. I'll prepare them. Sakura-chan, just relax and everything will be fine. Sakura nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with her. The voices in the kitchen were audible to her. She was desperate for this to be true. Perhaps she was correct, and she was having memory issues. She wished it had been like that. All she could do was go along with it and see what happened. She tried summoning chakra to summon genjutsu, but it was ineffective. There was no change from her most powerful release technique. Her stomach churned. She exited the bedroom to investigate what was going on in the kitchen. As she fumbled around the house, the day passed slowly. Lee left for the academy to teach taijutsu. Sakura was now retired and a full-time mother, so she was not required to leave. The kids assisted her with housework, and Peach remained clingy while remaining out of the way. Sakura adjusted to her new life day by day. A daily routine was established. She discovered that she was starting to enjoy things. She saw other people she knew who had children but never got together with them. Weeks went by. They became months, and the seasons changed. Today Peach was sick. Sakura was concerned about the sweating child. She had to drive the girl to the hospital. She picked up the girl and walked to the front door. She tripped over the couch while avoiding a toy. She landed with a thud and felt a sharp pain in her forehead where she collided with the couch. Around her, the world spun and shattered. She found herself in a dark room with only a small window in a heavy iron doorway for light. She became terrified and looked around for Peach. She yelled for the child. A chuckle could be heard from behind the closed door. Oh, you've returned. So, Sakura, how did your little trip into your perfect world go? Sasuke's voice carried into the dark room. Sakura whimpered and drew back. No, it wasn't a hoax, was it? Peach, Lee, and Brandon? Coo, he chuckled. Not a single one. Lee, on the other hand, is real because he hasn't been killed by my men yet. But what about the others? They are all figments of your imagination. That genjutsu had you imprisoned for 6 months. She broke down and sobbed. Every day was dark, with only a few flashes of light from the small window. Food was delivered on a daily basis, but it was never enough to satisfy her hunger. When she was trapped in the genjutsu, she realized she had eaten better. She was given less now that she was aware of the real world again. Some days would go by with nothing happening. Others gave her enough food to fill her stomach. It was all up to Uchiha's whims. Despite everything, she continued to lose weight. When his face appeared in the window, she refused to look at him. She had looked once. She was caught in Uchiha's perfect world genjutsu for a few months before finally getting the courage to smash her head against the wall. After all, it was not a perfect world. She was devastated by the loss of the people she had grown to care about. The third time he caught her in it, she dispelled it within seconds. Even though she knew she was broken, she refused to lie down and die. She was going to hang on. It was all she could manage. The heavy door swung open. Sakura backed away from the light as a hand grabbed her hair and sawed off a large chunk from one side. The perpetrator was not gentle and pushed her to the side. In disdain, the man left the door open. She could barely make it to the open doorway. She could only move at a snail's pace. But getting there was beyond her capabilities. She lay down and awaited the end. Darkness descended once more. Light. Bright, warm sunlight. Was she gone? She could sense movement. Her eyes popped open. Tsunade appeared above her. Tsunade, not so much. One more of Uchiha's genjutsu. She was now exhausted. She fell asleep again. She felt stronger than she had in a long time when she awoke, but Tsunade was still there. She couldn't even hold back this time. She simply refused to look at her former teacher and master. She couldn't get away, but she could at least ignore the phantoms Uchiha tortured her with. Allow the person she didn't recognize to assist her. No more suffering. No more concern. She couldn't take it any longer. She was content to let things go. Then Lee appeared. This time, she didn't have to let go. He made her hurt herself and him to prove that he was real. She was liberated. As she finished her story, her friends gathered around her. The girls hugged her, and the men couldn't keep their cool. This was beyond any reasonable person's comprehension. They were all now in agreement with Naruto. Nothing of Uchiha could be kept because everything Sasuke had once been was gone. The Uchiha and all of his works must come to an end. He was not going to be allowed to surrender. His minions could surrender, but the monster must perish. The meeting in which Sakura recounted her ordeal ended. Everyone there immediately checked on their loved ones. Naruto stood there watching his own children sleep soundly all night before retiring to bed. He hugged Hinata tightly as they finally fell asleep. Naruto was sleeping when he felt a tug in his mind. "You slept long enough, human," the Kyuubi said, his voice rumbling. "I'd like to speak with you." "What do you want, Kitsune?" "I was having trouble sleeping after hearing what happened," Naruto said, his voice tense. "The pink-haired one. Her story bothers you, and it makes you want to destroy the one called Sasuke." "The one that the would-be immortal Orochimaru infected with his tainted soul?" the Kyuubi inquired quietly. "Yes," Naruto grumbled. "Good. I would assist you for that purpose," the fox-shaped demon grumbled. "Why? What's in it for you, Kitsune?" Naruto questioned. "I enjoy his death, and his actions have offended me." That admission astounded Naruto. "You're a demon, Kitsune." Surely you've done worse in your life, he questioned. The Kyuubi's murderous intent toward Naruto became so intense that he gasped in real life. Do not judge me by your mortal standards. You know nothing of demons and even less of the tailed beasts. We have our own role to play in the scheme of things. There is more to the worlds than your puny human mind knows. You are like ants who see the grandeur of your anthill and think it is the entire universe. This Orochimaru has offended many others because he unbalances things. So why isn't one of these others doing something about it? Naruto wondered. Would you use your Rasen Shuriken to chase a fly away from your face, human? No. It's the same principle. Oh. Naruto paused before continuing. I need to know why you truly want to help and what you hope to gain from this, Kitsune or no deal. The Kyuubi snarled. As a Kitsune, he despised saying anything that could be used against him later. But he didn't have much of a choice this time. He offended me. He killed one of his own newborn progeny, which even a demon would not do. We may plot and conspire against our own kind of demon. We may kill the newborn spawn of another, even adults we have sired if it suits our needs, but we never kill a pup of our flesh and would defend one to the death. Wait, you would defend a baby of yours to the death but kill a fully grown one? Naruto wondered. Of course. A demon always defends their mate and pups. When they are grown, they are no longer pups and are no longer my concern. They either live or die on their own merit. The greatest honor a demon can have is to be thrown down by their own progeny while still in their prime, the Kyuubi smiled. But, back to the point, you came to me and bargained in good faith when you had the option not to, and I am bound by honor to do the same in return. The Death God was cheated by Orochimaru years ago, and he wants the rest of his prize. Aiding in delivering the escapee would be something in my favor, so I struck a bargain. If I can deliver Orochimaru's soul to the Shinigami, I will only be bound for an. Naruto nodded as he realized what was going on. How do you deliver Orochimaru's soul? Oh, that part is simple. Engage the Uchiha in single combat once more and willingly release my seal. This will bring the Shihinami to the battlefield, and I will do the rest. The soul is still sleeping within the Uchiha. Once I destroy the Uchiha, I will go with the Shihinami and both mortal souls. How do I know you won't just turn on me? Naruto wondered. Honestly, you don't. If I had the choice, I would kill you the moment I saw you. But, to put your mind at ease, we are still bound together. Only the Death God can separate us now, and he will do so once I deliver the souls. Once separated, I will serve my time and be freed afterwards. You still have pups to defend, and the Death God does not want you yet, so you can live on. What if you are unable to deliver the souls? We die, Kyuubi no Yoko said, laughing. Tsunade yelled, are you freaking insane? I didn't say I was going to do it yet. I just said it was an option made available, Naruto responded calmly. Do you honestly believe the Kyuubi will keep his word, Naruto? Kakashi inquired. He wants to live, Kakashi. This is his only chance at this point. If I break the seal, his chakra will kill me in 5 minutes and we'll both die, and there's nothing he can do about it, Naruto explained. Are you willing to die for this? Tsunade inquired. Just another day as a ninja, Ba-chan, Naruto finally said, his trademark grin on his face. Tsunade was tempted to smack Naruto for even suggesting the demon's plan, but she could see the advantages. Naruto became solemn once more. I know it's a risk, but for once, I'm willing to put my faith in the kitsune. Uchiha Sasuke couldn't believe the blonde idiot's arrogance and stupidity. The image of Naruto announcing his challenge was on the very medium Sasuke had planned on ensuring his victory. I know this will find its way to Uchiha Teme one way or another, but I want the rest of the world to know about it. I challenge you to a fight. A battle, not a duel. In our favorite spot, it's an all-out, no-holds-barred battle to the death. One man enters and one man exits. Come on, you know you want it, Uke-chan. Sasuke growled and yanked his fist from the shattered television screen. Fine, if he's so desperate to die, I'll gladly kill him. One of his messengers came in carrying a message for Sasuke. All agents are in place and waiting for the command to proceed, Sasuke said, his voice deep and Orochimaru-like, chilling the messenger to the bone. Naruto stood once more on the stone head of the first Hokage in the Valley of the End. It struck him as odd that this location seemed destined to be a battleground. Then he laughed at himself for remembering Neji and his Chunin exam battle half a lifetime ago. He cast an eastward glance. In the small country between fire and lightning, the mountains with Kama's home lay. He knew a part of him would always call that forge home, but he now had another. He cast a glance south, toward Konoha. He wondered if he'd ever see that house again. Despite the kitsune's assurances, it was possible that he would still die here today. Hinata and the kids tugged at his heartstrings. The previous few months had been some of his happiest in memory. He returned his attention to the other statue and waited in silence. Yo, Blondie. You shouldn't be so down. You look just wrong wearing a frown, rhymed Killerby as he walked out of the nearby trees. Naruto appeared surprised. You're the last person I expected to see here today, he admitted. B appeared solemn and focused as he hopped up to stand next to Naruto before speaking quietly. I didn't expect to be here today, but my buddy told me something important was going on here and I didn't want to miss it. He didn't say what it was, so I came. Naruto gave a nod. Things like that were beyond his understanding because he refused to bond with the kitsune, but Jinchuriki had a glimmer of higher things because of the nature of the bijou. The blonde hadn't given much thought to how the kitsune had dealt with the death god, but he had a feeling it wasn't a lie. A kitsune could twist the truth to suit itself, but it couldn't outright lie. Well, you've got a ringside seat for something special, Naruto smirked. In one way or another, you will be the last of your kind after today. B only raised an eyebrow and said nothing else. Finally, the imposing rapper nodded. I guess this will be a day to see. The main witness is the Killer Bee. The Uchiha is about to arrive. I don't know who will win, but make him yours for the sake of the world. Uchiha, Naruto said growlingly as Sasuke appeared on his ancestor's stone head. Naruto, Sasuke responded coldly. I hope he's not going to flee this time? You brought help, I see. I thought he was still hiding from the beating I gave him a decade ago. Think what you want, Uchiha. I walked away from that fight, and you thinking you won suited my needs. Aight? B chuckled. I like the support, but this is a private fight, and I would appreciate it if you remained neutral, Naruto said to Killer Bee. Killer Bee nodded and jumped off the statue before running to a vantage point on the nearby cliffs to observe. Naruto just stood there, hate in his eyes, staring at Sasuke. What's wrong, loser? You seem to be trying to pierce me. Is there something bothering you? Sasuke teased with a small smirk. How can you do such things, Uchiha? You are not the Sasuke I knew as a boy, and everything you have done has only demonstrated that you are no longer human. I figured you'd want to air your grievances first, so I do what I need to do for my vengeance. What revenge? Itachi is dead. All the people involved in your clan's death are dead. There is no need for revenge, Uchiha. You have already had it. You wouldn't understand, Naruto. I suffered, and Konoha continues to mock my suffering. It must be destroyed. Suffering? You were practically a prince in that village. You could have had a wife and a dozen mistresses and none of them would have complained. You were loved by those people until you tossed them away like trash. You would have had a good life if you had only chosen to have one. Yes, your family was killed but you refused to move on. You're still the same 8-year old boy crying for his family and thinking of foolish. As his own rage grew, Sasuke growled. My vengeance is not foolish. They allowed it to happen. They must pay. My sound will raise Konoha to the ground. I had given them time to grovel before me and beg for their worthless lives, but no more. No matter what happens here today, my revenge will be complete. Konoha will fall. Today. And you, Naruto, will not be there to mourn over the bodies of your children. Sasuke now pointed behind Naruto. When the blonde turned around, she saw pillars of smoke rising in the distance. No, he said quietly. Kill him, boy. For once, Kitsune, I agree with you. Naruto returned his attention to Sasuke, who was smirking. Naruto roared his attack. An hour earlier, Konoha's sleeping face was bathed in morning light. People were just getting started with their day. Parents were getting their kids ready for school. Ninja were training in the cool morning air before what was expected to be a hotter than normal day. Kakashi looked out the window of the Hokage tower. Naruto will soon face the Uchiha. The sound has been unusually quiet recently. Today will change all of that. The entire war is riding on what happens up in the valley, he noticed on the wall in the distance. A person dressed in gray stood there. None of the guards wear that color, he exclaimed as the building shook. As the tower buckled and collapsed behind him, he leapt out the window. Massive explosions breached the walls of Konoha in a dozen places as sound ninja boiled up from hidden passages in and around Konoha. They started killing everyone they saw. Kakashi landed and returned his gaze to the tower's ruins behind him. It had to have been Root. They'd had decades under Danzo to prepare for anything. They have now paved the way for Konoha's destruction. It only took a quick glance around to figure out what needed to be done. The majority of our forces are on the ground. The majority of the remaining ones were clinging to the walls. This is going to be bloody hand-to-hand combat with many civilian casualties. An Anbu team landed beside him. To be able to fight, Kakashi removed the Hokage's ceremonial robe. Wounded ninja attempted to pull themselves out of the tower wreckage, only to be attacked by sound troops. A pair of Anbu flanked Kakashi, while a third handed the white-haired leader his sword before drawing a kunai for herself. They fled to fight the invaders. The sound ninja in the area around the tower were dead minutes later, allowing Kakashi to focus on the bigger picture. Hinata had just finished dressing for her morning workout. Her gentle fist mastery was still inferior to that of her father or sister, but she was still ranked third in the Hyuga overall. Despite having only one eye and being unable to see the Tenketsu, Neji could beat her in sparring in less than half the time. This did not bother her in the least. They were her relatives. Hazashi and Kushina were already waiting outside when she came out. Today was her turn to spar with the kids. Hazashi would one day be as skilled as Neji. He was a Hyuga, but he had Naruto's energy and determination to succeed. She or Hiyashi would soon start showing him more advanced forms. Kushina had started studying under Tsunade and had grown into a cute blonde shadow to her grandmother. In just a few weeks, her upbeat personality had won over the majority of the hospital staff. Her Byakugan, combined with her perfect memory, allowed her to learn medical jutsu at an alarming rate. Her skill had already surpassed that of a year's training for a medic. Hinata was clearly proud of both of her children. Her hand rubbed her belly. If she was late for another day, she would have to see Tsunade. Naruto would be overjoyed if he could help raise a child from birth. Hinata looked around as thunder rumbled in the clear morning sky. Byakugan, she thought as her bloodline activated, her vision expanding outward for nearly a mile in all directions. She knew she was the reason her children were so gifted in their own advanced version of the Hyuga bloodline when she pushed it that far. Her own couldn't pick out the finest details, but she could see further in all directions than any Hyuga in history when it was active. Unknown ninja were emerging from shielded tunnels into the open, and she flinched as she saw dozens of civilians dying in the first few seconds. She shifted her focus in one direction to extend her sight out to 6 miles, then slowly turned in a circle. The clan compounds are not infiltrated, but the civilian areas are all under heavy attack, she realized. We're going to your grandfather's house, Kushina and Hazashi. Make your way there right away and don't stop until you reach him. I'll gather the house staff and follow. Go. She commanded, and neither child was inclined to disobey when they heard her tone, which sounded like their grandfather when he was angry at someone, and the children dashed for the wall gate that connected their home to the Hyuga compound. Hinata kept her bloodline active by focusing on the running children and locating the 3-person house staff. The cook and maid were inside, but the groundskeeper was outside, holding a shovel and looking around as a pair of sound ninja attacked him. The man fell quickly, but injured one of his attackers. The children had already passed the lone gate guard and into the main compound when Hinata emerged with the remaining staff. A dozen sound ninja were already closing in on the house, so she took the initiative and attacked, while the cook and maid ducked back inside. Her first strike caught her attackers off guard. She struck without hesitation, and the man died in a split second. She turned to block the next one before striking his temple and killing him. The ninja formed a circle around her, presumably to keep her out of reach. Kunai and shuriken flew at her, and she spun in the kaiden to deflect them, but she couldn't do much because the circle moved with her. If she advanced, they retreated, while the far side advanced. They seemed more intent on wearing her down than killing her. The cook and maid stormed out of the house, both wielding the ceremonial but functional naginata kept just inside the door, impaling the ninja in front of them and providing Hinata with the distraction she needed to engage the rest, who succumbed quickly to her attacks. Thank you for your assistance, Hinata said to the pair before leading them away from the Hyuga compound. Hinata led her house staff to the Hyuga's main complex, where her father stood near the main building's doorway with the children by his side. A platoon of sound ninja were attempting to break into the grounds, but a counterattack from Neji and Tenten out of the forge broke the assault. Hiyashi was perplexed by their appearance from the building, but barely kept a smile hidden when he realized Neji was wearing Tenten's shirt and Ten. Sound Ninja attempted to place explosive charges along the sides of the hospital when he heard a shout from the roof and saw Tsunade surrounded by smoke. Slugs lined the eaves of the roof and spit acid at the charges. The main entrance door then opened to reveal an angry Lee. You sound ninja have chosen a bad day to attack my home. Sakura-chan is still healing within these walls. The crimes committed against her have made me angry. Lee's round eyes narrowed as he flooded his system with chakra from the gates, then moved faster than they could, and the entire force assigned to destroy the hospital died, their heads separated from their shoulders. Civilians retreated into their homes all around Konoha, a common practice during the terror attacks that had plagued the village since the war began. However, for the first time, the earlier terror attacks on the village worked against the sound. People had become more paranoid about just being outside. They had learned escape routes and how to react to danger in a matter of seconds. Most of the rebuilt civilian homes had become more heavily constructed and defendable over the years, with oak and brick replacing bamboo and paper as the preferred building materials. Sound forces discovered a well-defended civilian population in a series of miniature fortresses, not a cowering populace in fragile homes. The people caught outside fell, but the homes withstood assault until the Konoha ninja clans could respond to the aid of their fellow villagers. The second Konoha invasion became the Konoha slaughter, and only one man from the Sound Army that attacked Konoha that day survived to report back to Otto. Naruto roared in rage and charged at Sasuke, who calmly activated his bloodline and prepared his parry before Naruto had finished his jump to Madara's stone head. Naruto stumbled but followed up with a powerful taijutsu attack. The blonde had learned well from Guy. His attack was crisp, clean, and powerful, but nothing could get past Sasuke's defense with an active Sharingan to guide him. The fight moved down the shoreline, then up the cliff. The damage from their first fight here 13 years before had softened but still stood out clearly. Sasuke had only dodged, blocked, or parried all of Naruto's attacks until now, when the Uchiha attacked in response, forcing Naruto to react and defend himself. Fortunately for Naruto, the Sharingan did not help in attack as much as it had in defense, and the blonde began absorbing punishing blows to the chest and stomach, and his arms quickly began to bruise as Sasuke pressed his advantage. Surely this isn't all you've got, loser? I had a harder time the last time we fought here against you, Sasuke mocked. Naruto jumped back and cast a wind jutsu at Sasuke to prevent the Uchiha from using a fire jutsu on the blonde. A few moments to calm himself was all Naruto needed. His hands slid down to his thigh holsters and he flung a number of special kunai at Sasuke, who was still standing there. Chidori current, he said as lightning struck the kunai, melting it. Did you really think I'd let you use that jutsu around me? Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. It worked the last time we met, Naruto exclaimed. To escape your death, loser. Not this time, Sasuke grumbled. Sasuke attacked again, but this time he couldn't land a solid hit on Naruto. It's like a whole different fight now, he thought. When he's under control, his speed and skill are much greater than when he's upset. I need to get back into his head. You have yet to say anything about my treatment of your Sakura-chan, loser. You're so preoccupied with your Hyuga that she's lost all meaning to you. Sasuke mocked. Naruto growled slightly but kept his focus. His years as Ken had taught him patience and self-control, which were now put to the test, but he managed to maintain his defense. Only a poor excuse for a man would settle for forcing women to become pregnant in this manner, Uchiha. What's the matter, you can't get a woman to put up with you. Would they ask if you were in yet when you finished? Naruto retorted. The pair fought their way up and down the valley until they came to a very familiar spot, the same one they had been in their first battle. Naruto drew one hand back and formed a Rasengan, which quickly expanded to a big ball Rasengan without the assistance of clones. So, you want to try that tired old trick? Smirked Sasuke. fine. Let's see if you survive this one, loser, Sasuke said as he pulled both hands back. It's time, Kitsune, Naruto thought, picturing himself ripping off the seal that held the Kyuubi in the cage the death god had sealed it in, feeling the nigh infinite chakra press at the last bit of the seal that held it in place and only needing to dispel that. When Naruto grinned and made a hand sign with his free hand, the pair jumped up to slam their attacks into each other. As a claw of red chakra exploded from Naruto's stomach, the blonde was pushed back hard into the canyon wall as the chakra limb formed and grew. Claws and bones solidified out of the chakra as the leg continued to appear, and Sasuke was pushed back as the Kyuubi's chakra flooded the area. Sasuke skidded back hundreds of yards in the grip of the now red-furred claws, which held him flat against the ground. The body of the Kyuubi no Yoko formed behind around the end of the leg, leering down at the man held under its clawed hand. This is bad, Sasuke thought as he activated his Sharingan eyes, concerned, but knowing that he had suppressed this creature in Naruto's mind once and could control it again. The Sharingan whirled as he focused his will on the demon's eyes. The Kyuubi just grinned wider as the Uchiha tried to control it, and Naruto's fleeting worry about it faded along with his consciousness as the strain on his body was too much for him. Stupid mortal. You have no power over me. The very thing that would have condemned me has shielded me from your wrathful gaze. I am currently neither fully demon nor fully mortal. It will only take one simple act to reclaim what is mine. The demon then pressed his clawed hand 2 feet into the ground beneath it, flattening Uchiha Sasuke's body and leaving only his head, the eyes fading from the red of the active Sharingan to the black of his normal ones. The death god's corpse-like form appeared over the body, reaching into the corpse and yanking out the squirming souls of Sasuke and Orochimaru with almost sinister glee. At long last, it said in a chilling voice that only Killer Bee could hear. As promised, I delivered the souls. Is our agreement fulfilled? The Kyuubi inquired. The death god only nodded before pulling the knife from its teeth and stabbing it into the Kyuubi's chest. Blue chakra poured out of the wound and flowed back into Naruto's still form. Naruto exclaimed as he resumed deep breathing, and as the death god and the Kyuubi faded from view, the Kitsune decided it needed to get in one last taunt. I never liked you, but you were amusing. Uzumaki Naruto, you'd make an excellent Kitsune. I will devour you if we meet again. As Naruto passed out again, the god and demon faded from view. Naruto sat up on the bricks in front of the Kyuubi's former cage to see a blonde-haired man smile at him, and the fourth Hokage nodded and spoke. I only have a few minutes before I chase them down, Naruto. The death god still owns my soul, and I must leave as well, Minato said, pointing to the gates that once housed the Kyuubi. In there is all the mixed chakra that was extracted from the Kyuubi to separate you two. It's yours, with a little of it mixed in. There is the equivalent to one of its tails in total. Use it as you see fit, but keep in mind that it will not be replaced once it is gone. You will then have the chakra capacity of 3 normal cages. Even for you, I believe that is sufficient. Naruto stood up and looked at his father, unable to say anything else because he couldn't find the words. Minato broke the silence by stepping forward and tightly hugging Naruto, saying, I am proud of you, my son. Naruto felt tears stream down his cheeks as he returned Minato's hug, leaving him holding his breath. Naruto opened his eyes to find tears on his face once more. Once Naruto had calmed down, he turned to the south and looked at the rising smoke. It had thinned significantly, indicating that the fires had been extinguished, implying that Konoha had won that battle. He sat up when he saw Killer Bee walk up carrying Sasuke's head, his sightless eyes staring straight ahead. The rapper handed it to Naruto, who held it by the hair to avoid getting his hands bloody, and the need to say anything rose up in him. Oh, poor Sasuke. I recognized him, B. A teme of infinite harumphs, the blonde remarked, a wry grin on her face. Killer Bee was stunned for a moment before bursting out laughing, followed by Naruto, and the pair did nothing else for several minutes. Naruto returned to Konoha with the head of Uchiha Sasuke. He didn't really want to do it, but he did it anyway. He delegated the cleanup of the crushed body to the Anbu who had arrived in the valley. He was taken aback when he became tired halfway to the village. He appears to have to adjust to new circumstances once more. He idly scratched an itch on his face and ignored it. He came to a halt near where the pursuit team had first encountered the sound so many years before. This was not what he had hoped for all these years. Back in simpler times, he honestly thought Sasuke was just confused. In retrospect, the parallels between Team 7 and the Sannin were all too obvious. Jiraiya, like Naruto, had spent far too long believing that he could bring his friend home before succumbing to reality. Sasuke, like Orochimaru before him, had gone too far for words or friendship to change his mind. Naruto noticed the Anbu accompanying him were becoming nervous after standing in the open for so long, so he continued on his way home. No, it's my duty, Naruto replied when one of them offered to carry the head. I'm keeping my word. The group traveled for hours. Naruto was aware of his face itching the entire time but paid little attention to it aside from the occasional scratch. His thoughts were elsewhere. He landed near sunset on the road leading away from Konoha and examined the damage. The village wall was shattered in numerous places that he could see, and he assumed that the damage extended to the entire wall. That much would take a long time to be repaired. The Hokage mountain, on the other hand, remained untouched, and no smoke rose from within its walls. He approached the gate and came to a halt just outside the open doors. He sighed as he crossed the threshold, looking down at Sasuke's head. Well, Sakura-chan, I followed through on my promise. I returned Sasuke. Kakashi established an office in the school because it was the most appropriate location for an administration center. Naruto entered the principal's office, now Kakashi's, and placed the head on the desk. A little too much, Naruto? You could have hidden it in a storage scroll or something, Kakashi said quietly. The Uchiha may have been Konoha's enemy, Kakashi, but Sasuke was once my friend. That was something I needed to do for that person's memory. Furthermore, by keeping it out like this, the eyes have become completely unusable. The Sharingan has vanished, Naruto responded. Kakashi spoke while pointing to the head. His may be gone, but remember what Sakura told us. The Sharingan has not completely vanished. Who knows how many babies are out there right now? Naruto scratched his face again, drawing Kakashi's attention away from the head and back to Naruto. Both of the Hokage's brows rose. Your face, Naruto. Naruto asked, what? With a puzzled expression. Kakashi directed Naruto's attention to a mirror on one of the walls and instructed him to examine it. The man approached it and took a long look through the silvered glass. The heavy burn scars on one side of his face and the crisscrossing cuts on the other had almost completely faded. The 6 whiskers remained visible, but they appeared faded. The cut scars had faded even more as he watched. How? But what about the kitsune? I shouldn't be healing those because there shouldn't be anything to heal, he mumbled. An Anbu peeked in through the door, interrupting the pair. Hokage-sama, Uzumaki family Sans is waiting outside, says the Hokage. The agent pointed to Sasuke's head. Do you think I should take that to Morino-san at T&I? Kakashi nodded and passed over the scroll, which also contained the rest of Sasuke's remains. Just as a blonde flash ran through the doorway, the agent vanished with the remains. "Daddy!" yelled Kushina, slamming into Naruto with a running hug. Hinata and Hisashi trailed behind at a slower pace. Naruto was babbling to the blonde child. "Daddy, you should have seen it. When some bad people came by, Mommy kicked their buttocks. She even made the scary face that Grandpa and Aunt Hanabi occasionally make. Go!" she exclaimed. "While she beat up the bad guys, Zashi-kun and I took off. Mommy was even assisted by the cook and maid. I had no idea the sticks in the hall could do that." When she continued, Naruto was still trying to process what his daughter had said in a single breath. "Your owies are almost gone as well. How could that have happened?" He finally just hugged his oldest child when he realized she wouldn't even give him a chance to think about it or say anything. Hisashi stood by looking strangely pleased as Naruto stood hugging the girl and wrapping his other arm around his wife. Hinata kissed her man and smiled as well. "Welcome back, beloved. Do you think you'll be able to handle another one of these?" Naruto was taken aback and simply nodded before kissing his lovely wife. Tsunade glared at Naruto while running her glowing hand over his face. She was perplexed, but she had a good idea why he was healing. She scanned a few more areas of his body, focusing on his right chest and neck. He'd received severe wounds from Sasuke during the first Valley of the End battle, and even after the Kyuubi healed those wounds, some trace remained. She discovered no scar tissue or breakage in either location. She glared once more before speaking. "I can tell you what happened, but not how or why. All of the wounds you've ever received are not only healing, but also regenerating. My best guess is that the tainted chakra you received after releasing the Kyuubi is causing it. It functions as an artificial bloodline while in your system. There is enough demonic chakra in it to harm the cells, but the chakra is also healing it." "But why my expression this time, Ba-chan?" "This did not occur when the Kitsune's chakra was unsealed a few months ago," Naruto explained. "I honestly have no idea, Naruto. There has only been one other instance of a Jinchuriki surviving the demon's release, and that was Gaara. I've never examined him, so I don't know," she concluded, leaving them both unsatisfied. "But I believe you should stop shaving to see how well the healing is going." "I miss my hair," she admitted with a caring smile. Naruto smiled. "Hinata already told me that one, Ba-chan. So, am I back on the job?" Tsunade's smile faded quickly. 2 days off, no training, or I'll schedule you for an anesthetic-free colonoscopy." Naruto blanched and grabbed his buttocks. The thought of the 1,000 years of death technique running through his head for several hours was definitely enough to make him sit down for 2 days to avoid it. He dashed out without a word of protest. Tsunade had an evil expression on her face. She finally got Naruto to listen to her. Kakashi sent the formal surrender request to Sound, but was surprised when the messenger was turned back at the border. The alliance's terms were not acceptable to the Sound village. Conditional surrender and prosecution of war criminals while leaving the village intact was a generous offer considering they all willingly followed the Uchiha, the Hokage thought bitterly. Now we must fight, bleed, and die in order to prevent the worst of the lot from escaping. Storming the main village will cost both sides thousands of lives. I'm not even going to think about the civilian cost. Thousands more will perish in the fighting. Kakashi looked at the liquor cabinet in the office and was tempted to have a few drinks to distract himself for a few more hours. Crap, he grumbled. He dispatched a messenger. Attacks on Sound Bunker's grid marks A17 and B12 will go ahead as planned. They refused our surrender call, he told the runner. Yes, Hokage-sama, the Chunin said before walking away. The bunker assaults proved to be extremely costly in terms of lives lost on both sides. The identity of the new Sound leader was finally revealed. Suigetsu succeeded the Uchiha with one disastrous addendum. He was not the Otokage, but rather the regent for Uchiha Sasuke's 6-year-old son, the Sandaime Otokage Uchiha Itachi. The maroon-haired boy was rarely seen, but his ancestors were unmistakably Uchiha. Karen was always present whenever the boy was seen, so it was assumed she was the child's mother. The people of Sound were devoted to the Uchiha legacy and refused to give up even an inch of ground. Naruto returned his wind kitsune mask to his face as he surveyed the battlefield. The alliance finally succeeded in encircling Sound's main village. It had taken over a month of hard fighting since the death of the Uchiha, but the Sound was finally cut off from outside assistance. It had also taught the ninja world many difficult lessons. Ninja were not built for open combat. Limited battles were one thing, but captured towns became bloodbaths as Sound ninja forces struck from within the population. In a series of blunders, the alliance was rapidly losing what little moral high ground it had. The small smoke village had been tasked with capturing a farming village. Sound ninja attacked a patrol, and Smoke's retaliation rendered the town lifeless. They claimed that they had not attacked the town, but that Sound ninja had. It didn't matter in the end because only the dead remained in town, and they weren't telling anyone what had happened. The second issue was war refugees. Internal corruption was rampant in the civilian system set up to feed them. Civilian authorities took food and supplies labeled for refugees and sent or sold them elsewhere. The daimyo of Ricefields country had retained some minor authority under the Uchiha and had long and loudly protested the treatment of his citizens. Non-alliance countries sided with him and put pressure on the alliance. Finish this war quickly or back down. Konoha and Suna pushed harder, but Sound's resistance grew stronger. In a surprise raid, a recently captured trade town was retaken, and a flood of supplies rushed into the Sound village for a week before the hole in the blockade could be closed. Naruto interrupted his thoughts and turned to face his prey. The Ricefields country was littered with hidden bunkers that had been bypassed by unknowing alliance forces, according to the Sound. One attack on civilians was launched from a hidden base. Team Kitsune was tasked with destroying it. Because the base was well hidden behind a waterfall, it had taken the team a week to isolate it. Water Kitsune called out, "Team check in." "Earth is ready," Ebisu replied. "Fire ready," Konohamaru replied. "Air ready," Naruto replied. "Like we planned, Team," Iruka concluded. The strategy was to be efficient rather than subtle. Earth used a jutsu to divert the waterfall to one side with a rock wall while air rushed through the door. "Futen Rasengan," he exclaimed as the chakra ball slammed into the steel-reinforced door. Before the door shattered inwards, wind chakra carved deep gouges into the metal. Air Kitsune entered the labyrinth of tunnels first, followed by water, earth, and fire. Earth and water took one path, while fire and air took another. Although the Sound resistance was less than expected, there were no calls for surrender. As the pairs met up and finished looking for enemies, time passed. A room with a boy around the age of 10 was discovered. The team discovered the boy in a cage, crying. Iruka removed his mask and pushed open the door. He was taken aback that it had been unlocked, but he didn't question it. The boy's relief at being freed was short-lived as he wrapped his arms around Iruka. for Uchiha-sama!" yelled the boy as he detonated hidden explosive tags and blew himself and Iruka up. "You should have been looking for a trap," Kakashi said calmly. "The boy couldn't have been older than 10, Hokage-sama," sneered Naruto. "None of us considered looking for a trap. Naruto, at the age of 8, I was involved in a war. Itachi was a chunin at the time. Age means nothing to a ninja. This is a war that none of us wanted, and it's escalating. The attack that killed Iruka was not the only one in recent days. The other 3 Cage nations are urging us to end this war immediately. There'll be no more waiting. They have more power than our alliance combined, and Smoke has already withdrawn. If we haven't pulled back by then, we must surrender within a week. Any longer, and they'll declare an alliance with Sound and force us to retreat." Naruto lowered his gaze. Iruka was the father he wished he had as a child. His death would be in vain if they stopped now. "When is Iruka's service?" "At sunset tomorrow," Kakashi replied. Naruto gave a nod. "Please send a message to all troops. The gates to Sound will be open at noon tomorrow to accept the alliance's surrender." "Naruto, the Sound has vowed to fight to the death," Kakashi became concerned. "They will not give up." Naruto locked his gaze on Kakashi. "They will after tomorrow morning." Because the Uchiha had it built over Orochimaru's original bunker, the Sound Village resembled Konoha in structure. Uchiha's palace stood in the center, taller than the walls that surrounded it. The first rays of sunlight fell on the flagpole bearing the Uchiha symbol. A toad landed on the wall and tossed a kunai. A flash of yellow light appeared, and a man in an orange trench coat stood against the wall. He made a sign, and his voice was heard throughout the village. "I call upon you, ninja of the Sound Village, to surrender. I give you 1 hour before I return to accept it." The man then disappeared. The forces of Sound in the village had mobilized and were waiting for the return of the man who had challenged the Uchiha and his heir's rule. The minutes passed until the hour came and went, and the man reappeared in the same spot. In the sunlight, his blonde hair stubble was visible as he stood on the wall. Several Sound chunin approached him and attacked him. They were killed by kunai to the throat before they could throw their own. Naruto cast a cold glance out at the Sound ninja arrayed near the wall, ready for a full-scale attack. "I request your surrender one more time. If I don't get it, I'll have to make you surrender." "We are never going to surrender," a Sound jonin who was assigned to respond yelled at Naruto. "We will rise again when your petty nuisance of an alliance retreats. We will not submit to anyone." "Then I'll have to force you to change your mind," Naruto said, his head bowed. "Ha! You, and which army?" The jonin laughed. Naruto cast a cold glance at the man. His pupils had lost their humanity. They were still cerulean blue, but they now have a vertically slit pupil with a horizontal bar in it. He focused by raising his hands into a cross-hand seal. Chakra smoke escaped in both directions along the sound wall. When the fog lifted, 10,000 shadow clones appeared on the wall. Me. As well as this army. The clones all drew weapons and jumped to the ground. As the Alliance forces approached the gates of the Sound Village, their scouts encountered no resistance. The gates swung open as the first approached. The one-leaf jonin in the group stared as Naruto emerged from an abattoir with a bloody black headband. "They surrender," he said to the jonin before disappearing in a flash of yellow light. One of the most beautiful sights in Konoha is the sunset. The memorial service for Iruka was well attended because the Jonin had shaped many ninja during his years as an academy teacher. Kakashi was in the lead, alongside Anko and her boys. Naruto was conspicuous by his absence. Kakashi waited as long as he could, but he had no choice but to start without the blonde. A murmur began in the back of the line as people walked past the picture of Iruka placing flowers on the table. Naruto walked purposefully to the front of the line, passing everyone. He hadn't changed his clothes, and they were stained with blood. As he came to a halt at the table, the fingernail length of blonde hair on his head was untouched by the light breeze. He placed a single leaf symbol headband on the table. The soiled black cloth was neatly folded beneath the metal plate. Naruto took a step back and bowed in the manner of a daimyo, saying, "Goodbye, sensei." Sakura stood alongside the rest of the Konoha 11. "That is the headband that Iruka-sensei gave to Naruto after he made genin," she said quietly to the others. It had previously belonged to Iruka. However, Sasuke had it in sound. Naruto then approached Kakashi. "The Sound Village has unconditionally surrendered. The war has ended. I quit," Naruto said as he strode away without looking back. Hinata discovered him hours later, still crying, in an abandoned shack in the woods outside Konoha's wall. The ringing sound of a hammer striking metal was heard twice, followed by a softened thump. The ringing repeated twice more, followed by another soft thump. The smithy's daily sounds were a timeless comfort to the old man wielding the heavy hammer. More blows were delivered before the man took a much-needed break. While stepping out into the cool evening, he placed the half-finished sword in the coals to keep it warm. "One more day, and I'll have that sword finished. The daimyo's order will be delivered on time. The wife will be happy." The smith looked out over the mountain valley where he lived. As the evening breeze seemed to promise rain, his badly wrinkled face relaxed. He looked at his 10-year-old great sleeping grandson's form and decided he wouldn't need to wake the boy to stoke the forge again tonight. The coals would keep the metal in good condition until morning. He lifted the boy and entered the house. The old man tucked the boy into his bed and fell asleep for a few hours. The old man remembered the date the next morning. They'd be there soon. It was Memorial Day. The Uzumaki would all gather at the home of the oldest living member on this day. With the death of his older sister, the responsibility fell to him. He looked down the long, winding road toward the valley's head and saw them approaching from afar. Since the last gathering 5 years ago, there have been many new members. Some of them had married. As the clan gathered, more children were brought along. Uzumaki Minato felt a pang of sadness as he realized he would probably never see this again. He could feel the long years creeping up on him and knew he wouldn't be around much longer. Even so, he couldn't help but smile at the impending gathering. Naruto, his father, had spent his childhood alone. He would be overjoyed to see so many of his relatives gather to remember. Some historians were not kind to Naruto. The Butcher of the Sound only saw the surface. But the truth was that, despite killing nearly the entire Sound ninja force, he had committed no atrocities. Everyone who died was wearing the Sound's headband as a ninja. Naruto knew he'd never be named Hokage after killing more ninja in an hour than his father. He left that life and returned to this valley in the mountains to mold steel and get away from things. Hinata, his wife, and their children had joined him. Minato was born 7 months later and had never known another home. Only Hinata was aware of her husband's anguish. The deed he committed tormented his few sleeping hours each night. But she stood by her man and ruthlessly dispatched any bounty hunter who came looking for the emperor's ransom on his head. It was strange that the bounty hunters would have had an easy kill if Hinata had not protected Naruto. Naruto would not have been able to defend himself. The bounty hunters eventually stopped coming to collect. The scarecrow tree in front of the forge could have played a role in this. Hinata added something from the mercenary who came after each one. Minato counted the individual items hung on the tree as a teen. His mother yanked him away from it after he had counted 200 items but had not finished. Despite his desire to abandon his ninja life, Naruto would not abandon his children. Uzumaki Kushina and Uzumaki Hazashi had returned to Konoha when they were 10 years old to prepare for their own futures. Kushina had grown to be a better medic and healer than her mentors, Senju Tsunade and Haruno Sakura. The Uzumaki's reputation would improve as a result of her life in service. The blonde angel of mercy would never turn away a victim. Ironically, the daughter had healed many injuries inflicted by her mother on bounty hunters. Bounty hunters who had left the valley alive, at any rate. Because Hanabi had children after the war, Hazashi did not need to take over the Hyuga. He grew in power and ability over time, eventually becoming the 8th Hokage of Konoha, succeeding Sarutobi Konohamaru. Naruto had only left the valley once, from the time of the war until his death, to see his son achieve what he had desired his entire youth. Minato stayed in the valley to learn his father's trade. His Byakugan's sharp eyes could detect any flaw in a weapon at a glance, and people from all over the elemental countries came to him for weapons. The old man looked at the forge's wall. The sashes of his forefathers, his father, grandfather, Namikaze Minato, and great-grandfather, hung from it. Next to them hung the 5 generations of sashes from Naruto's adoptive father, Kama. Despite its apparent humble status, there were always Uzumaki who returned to take up the trade. The man smiled as he looked at the sashes of his own daughter and grandson on the wall. Konoha had survived and grown since the Uchiha threat had been removed. Ninja found a golden age of peace unsettling. There was never a shortage of business, even without the open warfare of a full ninja war. Tsunade had lived to be 90 before she became too tired of maintaining her youth genjutsu. Her belief that her creation rebirth jutsu would shorten her life proved to be incorrect. Her use of healing jutsu had caused her body to rejuvenate slightly each time. On her 100th birthday, she died half drunk. Even after Naruto left, Kakashi never really took to the role of Hokage. He waited until Konohamaru was old enough and then retired to pursue a career as a writer. Icha. The next generation was a huge success for him, but the writers in the captain's chair were constantly compared. Lee and Sakura married in the end. Sakura had wanted to name her first child Peach, but Lee persuaded her to go with the more traditional Momo. When their children grew up, they became well known for their massive strength and taijutsu, as well as the pink hair that bred true through the generations. Within the Hyuga clan, Neji and Tenten married and raised a small family. The only son was lethal with thrown kunai and feared in close combat with his spinning porcupine technique. Minato raised his eyes to his wife, who had interrupted his thoughts. The woman's brown hair had long faded to gray, but he never saw anything but brown. The Uzumaki would never be a clan satisfied with conformity. He looked at his children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and their descendants, who all had different hair and eye colors. Byakugan of various hues, every eye color, hair in brown, black, blonde, red, and even a pink-haired grandnephew-in-law graced his family's gathering. Some of Naruto's 12 grandchildren were already grandparents. He'd be delighted to see all of his descendants gathered in one place like this. The Uzumaki favored large families. I warmly welcome you all to our home. We've all come to remember, Minato exclaimed loudly. The clan fell silent. We remember Uzumaki Naruto, the second Yellow Flash, and the Kyuubi no Yoko Jinchuriki. The Konoha Protector. The person who defeated Uchiha. He fantasized about becoming Hokage. He gave up his dream in order for Konoha to survive after his first and most precious person died. Amino Iruka is remembered. The first man to recognize Naruto. Naruto's destruction of the sound was caused by his death. We remember Uzumaki Hinata, my mother and clan matriarch. She was the first person to believe in Naruto, long after everyone else had given up. She was viewed as a failure because she was too caring, but that very kindness gave her enormous courage to defend those she cared about. We remember the Uchiha Scourge. The clan that brought the Kyuubi no Yoko to Konoha in the first place, thus ensuring their own demise. According to the monasteries, the last Uchiha child born in the sound died without incident. The Uchiha are finally extinguished. Minato took a moment to reflect silently at that point. Naruto had not murdered any children or civilians in sound. When the Alliance took control of the surrendered village, all of the Uchiha plots were made public. Sasuke's breeding program revealed no less than 57 living children born from him by nearly as many mothers. More than a dozen others, including Sakura's, had been killed at birth for reasons that no one else thought were worthwhile. Every effort was made to locate and address the entire Uchiha legacy. People would not simply murder the Uchiha children, but something had to be done. At this point, several religious orders stepped forward with an idea. All of the Uchiha children were separated and sent to various monasteries and temples. They were well treated but were never allowed to leave. The children were never told about their ancestors, and they lived in peaceful isolation. Children were not permitted. Minato had been told the previous winter that the last child had died. With that news, the entire world breathed a sigh of relief. Nine-tailed beasts could be dealt with as individuals, but a single one made up of all nine would have doomed them all. Without Uchiha, the now feared Sharingan Eye, a key component in freeing the Jubi, would no longer exist. Minato raised his head again. He gave a friendly smile to his clan, his family. We did remember. It's finally time to catch up with everyone. The Uzumaki cheered and dived into the vats of ramen that were waiting for them. A much smaller gathering was taking place elsewhere. A gray-haired man looked around at the half-dozen people in front of him. We are a small group with a powerful mission. We will exact our vengeance on the despised Uzumaki, the murderers of the Uchiha. The last prisoner has died. We have been weakened but not destroyed. We only wait for the right moment. The old man and his descendants before him focused their chakra and activated their Sharingan eyes at the same time.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.